The murder of Sister Cathy Cesnik, 1969, USA. She was a young nun who taught high school English and was loved by her students. She disappeared one November night in Baltimore, and when her body was found months later in a snow-covered field, the official investigation lasted barely long enough to matter. The case was closed, the city moved on, but the girls she had tried to protect never forgot her. And decades later, they would finally be ready to talk. This is the story of Sister Cathy Cesnik and the story of what she knew. Catherine Ann Cesnik was born in 1942 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the daughter of a working-class Catholic family. By all accounts, she was warm, funny, unusually perceptive, the kind of person who made you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. She entered the School Sisters of Notre Dame religious order in her early 20s, took her vows, and by the late 1960s was teaching English and drama at Archbishop Keough High School, an all-girls Catholic school in Baltimore, Maryland. She was 26 years old. Her students adored her. She drove a yellow Volkswagen Beetle. She had a close friendship with another young nun named Sister Russell, with whom she shared an apartment, a somewhat progressive arrangement for nuns at the time, living outside the convent, engaging with the wider world. Sister Cathy believed in being present, in being human, in meeting her students where they lived rather than behind the glass wall of institutional authority. That quality, that openness, that accessibility may have been exactly what got her killed. November 7th, 1969, a Friday evening in Baltimore. Sister Cathy leaves her apartment on Carville Road around 11 p.m., telling Sister Russell she is going to pick up an engagement gift for her sister and would be back shortly. She drives her yellow Beetle into the night. She never comes back. Sister Russell waits. An hour passes. 2 hours. By the time she contacts anyone, it is the early hours of November 8th, and Sister Cathy has simply ceased to exist, vanished somewhere between their apartment and wherever she was going, leaving behind nothing but her absence and the creeping, widening certainty that something has gone terribly wrong. The Baltimore police are notified. A missing persons case is opened. The yellow Volkswagen is found 2 days later, abandoned near a shopping center in the Lansdowne neighborhood, not far from the school where Sister Cathy taught. There is nothing inside it that explains where she went. No signs of struggle in the vehicle. She simply stepped out of that car and into whatever happened next. For weeks, then months, there is nothing. Baltimore is a city moving through its own turbulence in 1969. The riots of the previous year, still a fresh wound. The city reshaping itself around race and poverty and power. A missing nun gets attention, but the investigation does not seem to pursue every lead with urgency. No arrest is made. No suspects are publicly named. The case grows cold in the Baltimore winter, January 3, 1970, nearly 2 months after Sister Cathy disappeared. A man named Henry Schaefer is walking through a snow-covered field in Lansdowne, less than a mile from where her car was found, when he discovers something under the snow that stops him where he stands. It is Sister Cathy. Her body has been there, preserved by the cold, for weeks. She has blunt force trauma to the head. She was beaten to death. She is 26 years old. She has been lying in that field, alone, through the Baltimore winter, while the city went about its business. The medical examiner's report is completed. The police conduct interviews. And then, in a manner that will haunt this case for the next 50 years, the investigation essentially stops. No arrest, no trial, no public accounting. The case goes cold so quickly, so completely, that investigators and journalists who revisit it decades later will find the original files thin and incomplete, as though someone was not especially interested in finding answers. The question that will define everything that follows is simple. What did Sister Cathy know? To understand that, you have to understand Archbishop Keough High School, and you have to understand a man named Father A. Joseph Maskell. Maskell was the school chaplain at Keough. He was also, by the accounts of dozens of women who would eventually come forward over the span of decades, a predator of almost incomprehensible scope. Beginning in the late 1960s, Maskell used his position as a trusted priest, counselor, and authority figure to gain access to vulnerable girls. Girls with troubled home lives, girls with trauma, girls who were taught from birth to obey a man in a collar without question. He sexually abused them repeatedly, systematically, over years, and he did more than abuse them alone. According to multiple survivors, Maskell facilitated their abuse by other men, police officers, other priests, men whose identities were never fully established. He operated, by these accounts, as the center of a network, a web, a structure built entirely to protect itself. The girls told no one. They were children, inside an institution that told them God was watching, and the priest was his representative on earth. They were trapped in the most complete sense of the word. But some of them told Sister Cathy, "This is the part that changes everything." Multiple survivors later stated that in the months before her disappearance, Sister Cathy had been approached by students who confided in her about what Maskell was doing. She listened, she believed them, and according to the accounts that would emerge over decades, she made it known, or it became known, that she was planning to go to the authorities, or to the archdiocese, or somewhere outside the walls of that institution with what she had been told, shortly after she disappeared. The most devastating testimony comes from a woman who goes, for years, by the pseudonym Jane Doe, later identified publicly as Jean Weiner. Jean was a student at Keough in the late 1960s, one of Maskell's victims. She has said that Father Maskell, after Sister Cathy's disappearance, drove her to the field where the body lay, before it was officially discovered, and standing over Sister Cathy's body, told June that this is what happens to people who interfere. This is what happens when someone tries to expose what goes on here. If her account is true, it is not just evidence of a murder. It is evidence of a man so secure in his untouchability that he used a dead woman as a threat. A warning delivered to a traumatized teenager standing in a frozen field, looking down at someone she had loved and trusted. Jean Weiner buried that memory for decades. Many survivors do. The mind finds ways to survive what the body cannot outrun. It is not until the early 1990s that the story begins to fracture open. Several former Keough students, now adults, begin pursuing legal action against the Archdiocese of Baltimore, alleging abuse by Father Maskell. Jean Weiner and another woman file a lawsuit. Their accounts include not only the abuse but Jean's testimony about being shown Sister Cathy's body. Baltimore law enforcement, presented with this information, opens a renewed investigation. Father Maskell denies everything. The Archdiocese moves to shield him. The statute of limitations becomes the wall that every survivor's legal claim crashes against. The abuse happened too long ago. The courts rule for civil action to proceed. The lawsuit is dismissed in 1995 on those grounds. Maskell is quietly transferred, then retired. The institution closes around him like water around a stone. But the women do not stop. The case drifts through the years. Police make some efforts. Investigators look at Maskell as a suspect in Sister Cathy's murder. They look at another man, a convicted killer named Edgar Davidson, who lived near where her body was found and was later imprisoned for other crimes. Neither man is ever charged. Joseph Maskell dies in 2001. He never confesses. He never faces a criminal trial. He dies, by most accounts, peacefully. In 2016, something changes. Netflix releases a documentary series called The Keepers, directed by Ryan White. Over 7 episodes, it tells the story of Sister Cathy's murder and the abuse at Keough, primarily through the voices of the survivors, Jean Weiner, Teresa Lancaster, and dozens of others who had spent decades carrying what was done to them in silence. The documentary is meticulous, careful, devastating. It is watched by millions of people around the world. The survivors are no longer just women in a dismissed lawsuit. They are on screens everywhere. Their faces, their names, their memories given to the world in full. The response is overwhelming. Former students come forward. Investigators who had worked the case speak on record. Journalists begin digging. The Archdiocese of Baltimore, faced with public pressure of a kind it has never experienced, is forced to acknowledge the abuse, though it continues to dispute many specific allegations. In 2017, following the documentary's release, Baltimore County Police officially reopened the murder investigation. They note that the original investigation was inadequate. They examine whether institutional protection from the church, from law enforcement figures allegedly connected to Maskell, may have actively impeded the search for Sister Cathy's killer. In 2019, law enforcement exhumes Father Maskell's remains to obtain a DNA sample. They compare it to evidence recovered from the original crime scene. The results are inconclusive, not exonerating, not convicting, just inconclusive, which in its own way tells you almost everything about how this case has gone. As of the time of this telling, no one has ever been charged with the murder of Sister Cathy Cesnik. The case remains open. The survivors of Archbishop Keough High School, now women in their 60s and 70s, have spent the better part of their lives trying to get someone, anyone, with institutional authority to say out loud what they already know. What strikes you when you sit with this story long enough is the architecture of it. The way it was built to hold, the church protected Maskell. Elements of law enforcement were allegedly compromised. The statute of limitations protected the institution from civil liability. The criminal investigation was thin from the start. Every door a survivor tried to open was quietly, firmly closed. Sister Cathy Cesnik walked toward one of those doors in November 1969. She was 26 years old and she believed, the way people with genuine faith sometimes do, that the truth would be heard if you simply carried it to the right place. That institutions created to protect children would, when confronted with their failure, choose to do right. She was wrong about that, and she was killed for being wrong. The field in Lansdowne, where her body was found, is an ordinary piece of ground now. There is nothing to mark it. If you drove past it, you would feel nothing, because you would not know. But the girls she tried to protect know. They have always known, and they are still talking.